It is a Saturday morning in the summer of 1963, and a retired steelworker from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is working through his weekly Sears Roebuck catalogue at his kitchen table. He's already ordered a new socket wrench set, a pair of work boots in size 9, a replacement belt for the lawnmower. He turns another page and stops. Between an advertisement for a portable radio and a display of camping equipment, there is a photograph of a weapon he has not seen since the winter of 1944. He would know it anywhere. The ventilated barrel jacket, the horizontal foregrip, the 20-round box magazine seated below the receiver, the distinctive silhouette that every American who lived through the Second World War could identify in complete darkness, by touch alone, without a moment's hesitation. The caption reads, U.S. Military Surplus Thompson Submachine Gun M1A1. The price reads $11.95. He puts down his coffee. He served with the 3rd Infantry Division. He carried one of these through the Vosges Mountains in November 1944 when the temperature dropped below freezing, and the mud was so deep it pulled the boots from your feet. And the only thing between his squad and the German counterattack was the 30 rounds in the magazine, and the particular stopping power of the .45 ACP cartridge at ranges, where the range did not matter because nothing was more than 20 metres away. He picks up the telephone. He calls the Sears order line. He reads the catalogue number from the page. What this retired steelworker is ordering through the Sears Roebuck catalogue on a Saturday morning in Pittsburgh is the most famous submachine gun in American history. 5 million Thompson machine guns were built. They armed criminals and G-men, paratroopers and rangers, OSS agents and Marine raiders across every theatre of the most destructive war ever fought. And they ended up in the Sears catalogue for $11.95. This is how. And this is what the law of 1968 did to bring it to its permanent end. The Thompson submachine gun's path to the Sears catalogue began with the same fundamental tactical problem that had produced every major American weapons development of the 20th century. The problem of what to put in a soldier's hands when the standard rifle was too long, too slow, and too heavy for the situation he was actually in. General John Taliaferro Thompson had identified this problem with unusual precision. An ordnance officer of 30 years' experience, Thompson had watched the casualty figures of the Western Front accumulate through 1916 and 1917 and reached a conclusion that cut through the prevailing tactical debate with uncomfortable directness. The problem was not artillery, it was not manpower, it was the last 30 metres, the space between opposing trench lines that infantry had to cross, and that existing weapons made almost impossible to cross without catastrophic losses. The bolt-action rifle was too slow and too long for trench clearing. The pistol lacked the range and stopping power for sustained combat. The hand grenade was effective, but indiscriminate. What was needed was a weapon that one man could carry at a run and fire automatically, delivering enough rounds in the critical seconds of close assault to clear a defended position before the defenders could respond. Thompson called his concept the Annihilator. He founded the Auto Ordnance Corporation in New York City in 1916 to build it. The problem Thompson set himself was genuinely difficult, creating a reliable automatic weapon compact enough for close assault, powerful enough to stop determined defenders, and robust enough for the conditions of actual combat had defeated every previous attempt. The Chauchat, supplied to American forces by the French, was notoriously unreliable. Its open-sided magazine, admitting the mud of the Western Front with consequences that veterans described in language excluded from official records. The Bergmann MP-18, the German weapon that had pioneered the submachine gun concept, was simply unavailable to American forces. The Lewis gun was excellent but too heavy and too complex for the assault role Thompson envisaged. The requirement for .45 ACP caliber was non-negotiable. The Philippine experience of 1899 to 1902 had demonstrated that the .38 long Colt was inadequate for stopping determined attackers at close range, and had produced the .45 ACP cartridge specifically to address that deficiency. Thompson had served through the institutional memory of that lesson. He was not going to design a weapon that repeated it. The existing commercial and military submachine gun concepts were each inadequate in specific and documented ways. A weapon firing pistol-caliber ammunition from a blowback mechanism was straightforward to design, but difficult to make reliable at the volume of automatic fire that Thompson envisaged. A weapon heavy enough to absorb the recoil of sustained .45 ACP fire would be impractically heavy for the assault role. The competing demands of reliability, power, compactness, and weight had produced no satisfactory solution in the preceding decade of weapons development. Thompson believed he had the answer. He was right, but he was also 19 years too early. The engineers Thompson assembled at Auto Ordnance Corporation brought together complementary expertise that the project required. John Blish, a naval officer whose patent on a hesitation lock bolt system formed the mechanical basis of the first design, provided the primary operating principle. Theodore Eickhoff and Oscar Payne refined the mechanism through the development period that followed, working at the Auto Ordnance facility in Cleveland, Ohio, before production was transferred to Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company in Hartford, Connecticut, which had the precision manufacturing infrastructure that the weapon's complexity demanded. The mechanism they finalized was a delayed blowback design using the Blish hesitation lock principle. A bronze H-piece in the bolt assembly intended to delay the bolt's rearward travel by adhesion to inclined surfaces in the receiver until chamber pressure had dropped to safe levels. Subsequent analysis by firearms engineers would suggest that the .45 ACP cartridge's relatively modest pressure levels made the Blish principle mechanically unnecessary, that the Thompson would have functioned as a simple blowback design without the bronze H-piece. But it had been incorporated on the basis of Blish's patent and remained through the inertia of established tooling and the conservatism of manufacturers who preferred not to modify a working design. The Model 1928. A1, the standard Thompson of the early war years, measured 85.6 centimetres overall with its fixed wooden stock. It weighed 4.74 kilograms unloaded, rising to approximately 6.8 kilograms with the iconic 50-round drum magazine fully loaded, a weight that soldiers who carried it in combat described as entirely manageable in the moments when they needed it and genuinely exhausting over any distance. It fired the .45 ACP cartridge at a cyclic rate of approximately 700 rounds per minute, from either the 20-round or 30-round box magazine, or the 50-round or 100-round drum. The cuts compensator on the muzzle, directing propellant gas upward through a series of machined slots, reduced the weapon's tendency to climb during automatic fire to a level that even inexperienced shooters could manage. The manufacturing cost of the M1928A1 was approximately $209 per weapon, a figure equivalent to several weeks of an ordinary worker's wages in 1941, and a production cost that made equipping millions of soldiers with the Thompson economically impossible. The Army's response was the Wartime Simplification Program that produced the M1 Thompson of 1942 and the M1A1 of 1943, eliminating the Blish bolt in favour of simple blowback, removing the barrel fins and the cuts compensator, replacing the horizontal foregrip with a plain wooden foregrip, and restricting magazine compatibility to box magazines only. The M1A1 further simplified the design by machining the firing pin directly into the bolt face. The cost fell to approximately $45 per weapon, less than a quarter of the M1928A1's price, achieved through the ruthless elimination of every component and manufacturing operation that was not strictly essential. Savage Arms Company in Utica, New York, became the dominant wartime producer. Auto Ordnance's own facility in Bridgeport, Connecticut, contributed additional output. Total American production between 1940 and 1945 reached approximately 1.75 million Thompson submachine guns of all variants. The 5 million figure cited in accounts of the Sears surplus trade encompasses production across both world wars, interwar commercial manufacture, licensed production for Allied nations including Britain and Australia, post-war export programs, and military assistance to Allied governments. A figure whose precise documentation requires examination of records distributed across multiple archives and multiple countries, though the broad scale of production is not disputed by serious historians. In combat, the Thompson performed with the reliability and close-range effectiveness that its design had always promised, in precisely the conditions for which it had been intended. On Guadalcanal, in August 1942, Marine raiders armed with Thompsons conducted the jungle fighting that characterized the first months of the Pacific Campaign. The weapon's .45 ACP cartridge proved decisive in the intimate violence of jungle darkness, distances measured in meters rather than hundreds of meters, where the cartridge's heavy bullet delivered stopping power that lighter calibers could not match. Japanese accounts of contact with Thompson armed Marines described the weapon's psychological and physical effect in terms that reflected genuine professional respect from soldiers who understood automatic weapons. In the Vosges Mountains in November 1944, soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division carried Thompsons through the close country, fighting in conditions of mud and cold that tested every piece of equipment they carried. The Thompson's gas-operated mechanism, in its simplified wartime form, actually a straightforward blowback design, proved tolerant of the mud and cold that caused more finicky weapons to malfunction. Veterans of the Vosges described the particular reassurance of the Thompson's weight and the certainty it provided in the moments of close contact that the mountain terrain produced without warning. On the night of June 5, 1944, paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions carrying Thompsons dropped into the Normandy darkness. Officers and NCOs preferred the Thompson's compact dimensions and close-range stopping power to the longer M1 Garand for the night fighting in the Norman hedgerows. OSS operatives inserted into occupied France, Belgium, Norway, and Yugoslavia carried Thompsons on missions whose full operational details remain partially classified, though surviving accounts describe the weapon's cultural weight, its recognition as the weapon of American power and determination, as carrying a psychological significance in the occupied territories that more anonymous weapons could not replicate. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. The comparative record of the Thompson against the weapons it faced and the weapons it served alongside reveals both the genuine qualities that made it the most beloved submachine gun of the war and the costs that those qualities imposed. Germany's MP40 represented the direct philosophical alternative. Where the Thompson employed the heavy .45A CP cartridge in a weapon of considerable precision machined complexity, the MP40 used the 9mm Parabellum cartridge in a stamped steel design that could be produced in a fraction of the time and at a fraction of the cost. The MP40 weighed 3.97 kilograms, 3/4 of a kilogram lighter than the Thompson, and fired from a 32-round box magazine at approximately 500 rounds per minute. German production of the MP40 reached approximately 1.1 million weapons during the war, comparable in scale to American Thompson production, but achieved at considerably lower cost per weapon. The caliber comparison between .45 ACP and 9mm Parabellum has generated sustained debate among firearms historians. The .45 ACP bullet at 14.9 grams is approximately twice the mass of the standard 9mm Parabellum projectile, delivering its energy at lower velocity in a manner that produces a wound channel of greater immediate diameter at the close ranges where submachine guns operate. German ordnance officers examining captured Thompsons consistently expressed professional respect for the weapon's close-range effectiveness, noting in particular the difficulty of treating .45 ACP wounds in field conditions compared to the smaller caliber wounds produced by the MP40. American soldiers who encountered the MP40 in combat generally described it as a capable weapon, whose lower caliber was perceptible at ranges beyond 25 meters. The Thompson's heavier bullet retaining its energy and accuracy at ranges where the 9mm performance fell off more noticeably. The Soviet PSH-41, produced in quantities exceeding 6 million across the war years, represented the most comprehensive deployment of the submachine gun concept of the entire conflict. Entire Red Army formations were equipped with the PPSH-41 as their standard weapon, a doctrinal approach that had no American equivalent. Its 71-round drum magazine gave it a capacity advantage over the Thompson's maximum 50 rounds, and its 7.62mm Tokarev cartridge, whilst lighter than the .45 ACP, provided adequate effectiveness at the ranges of submachine gun combat. Its production cost of approximately $6 per weapon, less than 1/7 of the Thompson's wartime simplified cost, reflected the Soviet prioritization of quantity over individual weapon quality. The British Sten gun, produced at approximately 10 shillings per weapon, provided the Commonwealth's answer to the submachine gun requirement, and offered the most direct contrast with the Thompson's quality. The Sten's stamped sheet metal construction required no precision machining, could be produced in improvised workshops, and was supplied in enormous quantities to resistance networks across occupied Europe. Soldiers who carried both weapons universally described the Thompson as the better weapon, more reliable, better balanced, more accurate, and more confidence-inspiring. The Sten's advocates could only counter with the observation that it was available and affordable where the Thompson was not, which was an entirely accurate observation, but not a quality comparison. The post-war surplus of Thompson submachine guns followed the established pattern of American military disposal, from frontline service through reserve storage to the commercial channels that characterized post-war American consumer culture. Sears Roebuck, whose catalogue reached into every corner of American life, from the largest cities to the most isolated rural communities, offering goods that local retailers could not provide, at prices that local retailers could not match, became the most prominent mail-order face of the surplus Thompson trade. The $11.95 price in the Sears catalogue represented the arithmetic of government surplus disposal, a weapon whose original manufacture had cost considerably more available at a price that reflected what the market would bear rather than what it had cost to build. For the retired steelworker in Pittsburgh, the Sears catalogue transaction was entirely straightforward. He read the catalogue number. He called the order line. He provided his address. The weapon arrived, legally, through the postal service, at the door of his Pittsburgh home, wrapped in brown paper with a Sears invoice enclosed. He carried it to the basement, where he kept it beside his fishing equipment and his toolbox, and the other accumulated objects of a working life. The Gun Control Act, signed by President Lyndon Johnson on October 22, 1968, ended the Sears-Thompson catalogue page, as completely and as permanently as it ended every other surplus military firearms transaction in American mail-order retail. The catalogue entry was removed. The order line ceased taking those calls. The infrastructure of the surplus trade, the mail-order provisions, the import channels, the casual retail availability, was dismantled by the Act's provisions over the months that followed its signing. The Thompsons already ordered, already delivered, already in basements beside fishing equipment and toolboxes across America. They stayed where they were, they remain there still, or in the collections of the people who subsequently acquired them. A registered, transferable Thompson M 1A1 commands between $20,000 and $35,000 on the current collector market. The $11.95 Sears catalogue order has become, through the operation of federal law and 6 decades of collecting, one of the most consequential mail-order transactions in American commercial history. Return to that Pittsburgh kitchen. Return to the retired steelworker with his socket wrench set and his work boots and his lawnmower belt. He has found something in the Sears catalogue between the portable radio and the camping equipment. He has put down his coffee. He has picked up the telephone. He's ordering the weapon he carried through the Vosges Mountains in November 1944, the weapon that was there when the temperature dropped and the mud rose and the German counterattack came through the trees at 20 metres, and the 30 rounds in the magazine were the only relevant fact in the world. $11.95. 5 million Thompson machine guns were built to arm a nation at war. They armed gangsters before the war began and soldiers through every year of it. They crossed every ocean and cleared every jungle and dropped into every darkness the war produced. They ended up in the Sears catalogue for $11.95. And then the law changed and the catalogue page was removed, and the most famous submachine gun in American history became something that no one would ever again order between the socket wrench sets and the camping equipment. The retired steelworker from Pittsburgh picked up the telephone on a Saturday morning in 1963. He made the right call.